Okay, so let's have a look over this one. So our last graphing lab, okay, that was on position versus time graphs. This one's on velocity versus time graphs, okay? We talked about those quite a bit last week, and we started into acceleration last week, so we know kind of what acceleration is. Obviously, this lab is dealing with accelerating objects, okay? In this case, sports cars, okay, or not sports cars, because there's a few on that chart that are definitely not sports cars, okay? So what we're going to be looking at here is how can we calculate the acceleration, okay, of each of these cars using a velocity versus time graph of their data. Okay? So change in velocity of a vehicle measured over time tells us acceleration. How can graphing help us calculate that? All right, our variables. We didn't actually run this experiment. Okay, that's okay. The variables in this experiment are the same, basically, as the last time. Okay, if time is going to be on our graph, and it's going to be on the x-axis, which variable is it? It's the manipulated variable. Okay, time, whenever it's involved, is the manipulated variable because we don't have a way to make time run faster or slower or backwards or sideways. Okay, so it can never be the responding variable. We can't really make it change. Okay. Our responding variable then is the one that goes on the y-axis. So for this lab, that's going to be the velocity. Yeah. Okay. That's what we're graphing. That's the things we're dealing with. I'm giving you that because we didn't actually perform this experiment. But what was done was they actually timed how long it would take cars to reach certain velocities. Okay, so time was the manipulated, velocity was the responding. Okay, all right. Now your controlled variables, those are ones that I'm going to let you think up. Okay, but if you were running this experiment, that is running a bunch of cars and testing their accelerations, what are some things that you would have kept the same every time you tested a car? All right. Now, keeping in mind a few things, because I often have people say, well, I'd make sure they all have the same tires. Well, you can't put the tires from a Toyota Tercel on a Lamborghini. Okay? It doesn't work. Okay? It'll shred them, and they don't fit on the rims because the rims are way too wide. Okay, so there are some variables that ideally you would probably like to keep the same, but in a situation like this are impossible to keep the same. But there are some things about how you test these cars, other than changing their structure, okay, that you could keep the same for every car for every trial. Right? You need to think those things up and explain why you'd control them. Okay. So we're going to plot the points. It says it's got this big long procedure in here about how to do this all by hand, which we are not doing. Okay, we are going to do this on Google Sheets. Okay, same as last time. So you'll open up yourself a new spreadsheet, okay, and fill it all in. Now, for the analysis, once you have the graphs done, and I say graphs plural, one graph for each car. All right, you will not get them both on the same. You will not get them all on the same graph. Okay, it's just way easier to make one graph for each of the 5 cars that you're going to do. Okay, now what that means is in your Google Sheet, you're going to need a sheet for each car. Okay, so you make your first one, then click Add Sheet and add another sheet. Don't open up a whole new file for each car. Okay, you can just open up a new sheet for each car, and then it's all in one place. Okay, copy those graphs over into your lab report, same as you did for the graphing lab. Okay, make sure that you have it spit out the equation, okay, so that that you've got y equals mx plus b for each car. All right, so when you're filling in the analysis, okay, this is the chart that you have that you're going to be filling in. So the car, the slope with units, okay, b with units, okay, whatever it is with units, okay, rank them from fastest to slowest, so 1 is your fastest, 5 is your slowest, okay, and this is another thing you're going to be calculating, okay, their displacement to 45 seconds. Okay, so for question number 2, from your data slopes, which of the cars that you chose accelerated the fastest? That's basically filling in the rank portion here, okay, but a little explanation is probably not a bad idea, right? For number 3, using your best fit line, calculate the displacement of each car in reaching 45 meters per second. On your sheet, I have provided further instruction. Okay, that further instruction in your lab report is, remember that you must use y equals mx plus b to find out how long in seconds it takes each of your cars to reach 45 meters per second. Okay, everybody follow me there? Yes, you do not want to use the times from this chart. Why not? Wouldn't that be easier? Well, actually it would, because it's right here. Except, is this point likely to be on your best fit line? No. All right, so you are going to have to do a y equals mx plus b calculation so that you know how long it takes your car on the line to reach 45 meters per second. Okay, and then you use your graph along with that number you just calculated to calculate the displacement of the car. You may have to go back in your notes and go over how you calculate displacement from a velocity versus time graph. It is something we did a whole bunch of times. Okay, it's not that difficult a calculation, okay, but you will have to look it up. I'm not going to give it away. Okay, that's one of the things you guys have to do on this lab. Carly, question? Are you going to ask me how you do that? Yes. Yes, you'd substitute 45 in for which value? Y. 45 meters per second is the speed. That's on the y-axis, right? So it's going in for y and you're solving for x. Okay. Okay, then you have to do your displacement calculation after that. So it's 2 steps. And I'm going to want to see your work for that. Okay, so if you're doing that on paper, make sure that you take a picture of it and insert that picture in here, okay, or type it in, whichever, but I want to see all the work for that. Okay, in case you go wrong, I need to know where you went wrong. Okay, and then you got your conclusion, okay, restate your hypothesis, explain why it was correct or incorrect. There's no evaluation on this lab. We didn't do the experiment. We don't know what the sources of error were because we weren't there. Okay, so you don't have to do a sources of error evaluation.
Do we just record our answers and stuff into the chart?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Other questions on what we're doing here? Okay. I am going to go, I did make a paper copy of this for you so that you can have it out, because when you're going back and forth to Google Sheets, you don't want to be going screen to screen all the time. It'd be easier to have a paper copy. So I will run and grab those paper copies for you so you can get, so that you can start your graph as well. But for right now, you can get started on the design parts. Okay. So I think we've covered everything that you guys will need to do. You guys know how to use Google Sheets, so you can get to it. Now, one thing to warn you about, okay, it is okay, your graphs are going to look like this. Okay, the points are going to do that. They're going to flatten. That's just how cars accelerate. They don't accelerate as well in their top gears as they do in their lower gears. You still want a linear fit on here. That is, so when it asks you, okay, which fit you want when you're putting on the trend line, make sure you tell it a linear fit, and it's probably going to draw something like that. It's okay. That's what we want it to look like. Okay? All right. Have at her. Okay, so guys, sorry, just I had a couple of questions here. People were saying, Mr. Coder, you don't have a Sheets file for us. You're right, I don't. Okay, just the expectation was that you just make one yourself. If you're lost on how to do that, when you're at this screen here, the assignment screen, just click Add or Create. Okay, and you just want to create a sheet. Okay, click on that. It'll open up a Sheets file for you, and I think it'll even name it. It even names it Need for Speed, Velocity versus Time Graph with your thing here. Okay. So when you open that up, so that you get it arranged properly, okay, your first column needs to be time. And it's going to be different for every car because every car's times are different. Okay, so I'm just going to write in here, okay, time in seconds. Right, and then I'll put in the times for, let's say, for the Ferrari here, just because it's first. Okay, so I'll have 0, and then 1.6, okay, and then 2.1, and 2.6, 3.7, 4.5. Whoop. Okay, remember, you don't want to put any letters in there, or Google Sheets gets confused. 5.7. And 7.9. Okay, and then I'm going to put here in the second column my velocity, and that's in meters per second. Okay, and what we're looking at there, okay, they're all the same. They start from, this one here is a column that you can copy for all the sheets, right? So I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. They all start at 0, then 13, okay, and then 18, and then 22, 27, 31, 35, and 45. Okay, so now I've got that. I can make a graph out of that. Now, that's my first car. That's for the Ferrari. If I want to make another sheet, I just click down here on the plus button. Okay, it says add sheet down here. Okay, I click on that, I get a new sheet, and the first thing I'm going to do is save myself a lot of work by copying that column over onto my second sheet in exactly the same place. Do that for all the cars. The velocity column is the same for all the cars, and they'll save you work. Okay, then all you have to do is put in their times again. Okay. Okay, if it says NA in a blank, it means that there was no data available. It possibly means the car won't go that fast. Okay, but in any case, there's no data for that point. Just leave it blank. Okay, Google Sheets will know what to do. Okay, just leave it blank. Suggestion here, when you make your graph of all of your data here, make sure that the title of the graph is the name of the car. Okay, or includes the name of the car. So it'd be like Ferrari velocity versus time graph. Okay, that way I know which graph I'm looking at when you paste it over into your lab report. Okay, otherwise it's just going to default to time versus velocity, right?